All right, good evening. This is the planning board meeting of December 12th, 2017. If we could please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start tonight's meeting off with, we have a 7 PM public hearing on the application of Edaville Land Holdings. And let me read the public hearing notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Town of Carver zoning bylaw, the Carver Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, December 12th, 2017 at 7:15. Oh, we planned this for 7:15, it's just a little after 7.
Well, you should wait then.
Oh,
Sorry.
all right. Well,
That means people who got the,
We'll have an intermission.
Just point of order. Do you want me to have the microphone here, or should I move the board up there?
it's always a tricky thing.
if,
You need the
it's good to
microphone.
have the microphone as close to you as possible. And as long as the, well, yeah, as long as the audience and the camera crew can see what you are showing us, it'll work out.
You're gonna have to wait till 7:50.
Yep.
This is why we started, this is why we did it at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll let
To do the minutes, Mr. Chair?
you could do
Sure,
the
we can go on to other business, and let's go to the minutes of November 14th, 2017, and we have December 5th, 2017.
Mr. Chairman, I am going to make a motion to approve November 14, 2017, as written, because we got them ahead of time.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second for the approval of November 14th's minutes. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 So that's unanimous. And we have December 5th's minutes.
This was the remote. I'll make a motion to approve December 5th, 2017, as written.
We have a motion.
Can I vote on this if I'm remote?
Yep.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye. That was 2 minutes.
They have to open it, but yes. Mr. Chair, you could go to the continuance, can't you?
We could.
I don't,
I don't know how long that's gonna take, but,
good point.
okay, this was at 7 PM on
Yes.
public hearing. It's a continuance for Lisa Crowley, 160 North Main Street. It's the Fetch and Rest Doggy Daycare. It's a continuance of the public hearing. If you would step up and use the microphone, please. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, again, I'll introduce myself. My name is Paul Costello. I'm an attorney at law with an office at 44 Pleasant Street in Bridgewater. I'm here tonight representing your petitioner applicant, Lisa Crowley. I'll be happy to go back and revisit the petition if you feel it's necessary. She is seeking a special permit to run a doggy daycare business on, from the Carver Marketplace, and her application indicates that she is seeking to occupy one of the empty stores. It's Unit G, approximately 2,800 square feet. She would provide dog daycare services from that location. Part of her petition involves a request to establish a barricaded or fenced-in area in the rear portion of the premises. We had spoke at some length about what that facility would consist of. One of the things that came up at the last, if I may, let me just hand this around if I could.
Thank you.
I'm giving you a copy of an email from Jesse Boyle, who is, I think, the assistant fire chief in town. There was one of the board members, and I apologize for not recalling which one of you, had raised the issue of whether or not that structure would be okay with the town. And as you can see, Mr. Boyle had checked with the building inspector and indicates, without going into a whole lot of detail, that the building department was fine with the proposal that Ms. Crowley has made for that outdoor facility. Again, this would be an exercise area for the dogs, and the spot, from which they would go out to put it delicately, relieve themselves when the occasion called for it. So one of the other things I think I'd like to bring up is that when we were here before, there was some question or concern about the waste, both solid and liquid. With respect to liquid waste, Lisa had indicated that she intended to use pea stone on the perimeters of this enclosed area. The surface of the exercise area would be graded or planed so that everything would run to the outer extremities of the enclosure. And the pea stone was intended to absorb at least the liquid waste. Since we were here the last time, she did some further investigating, and interestingly enough, was advised that the, what is it called? Infield material mix, which is what the Red Sox use in the infield area on nights when the weather isn't cooperating. And its use here is that it is roughly 2 or 3 times more absorbent than pea stone. And so she decided to go that route, and she'll replace the proposed pea stone with this infield mix that would go around the perimeter. With respect to the solid waste, that would be accumulated. The dogs would go out in groups of 10, and they would always be accompanied by one of her employees. And when the need called for it, they would pick up the solid waste. It would all be bagged. At the end of the day, it would be kept in a dumpster in lidded enclosure, and so the kind of double protection, if you will, between the bags and the dumpster will certainly serve to help with any kind of potential problem with odors. I guess, as a practical matter, on that specific issue, I just like to point out that, solid waste is solid waste. If we were talking about a restaurant, a busy restaurant in particular, you'd be dealing with quite a bit more solid waste that would be going out into a dumpster. My family's in the restaurant business, so I can speak personally to the fact that, honestly, if I had to choose between waste from 40 dogs going into a dumpster or dealing with a busy restaurant and what goes into their dumpster, I would take the former over the latter. So I think, the point is that she's got to be attentive to that issue, both solid and liquid, because if she isn't, her customers will not be happy with what her facility looks like. We could run the risk that dogs would be, could get ill, and all she needs is, one incident like that, and it's going to hurt her business. So there's nobody with a greater incentive to keep meticulous, or pay meticulous attention to those issues than Lisa, because really, her business depends on it. We're happy to answer any questions, any further questions, if you have them. I think those were, well, I guess on the noise issue, that came up at the last meeting. And in speaking to that, as I mentioned, the dogs would come out in groups of 10. Now, we should point out that the hours of operation will run from 7 in the morning to 6 in the evening. The drop-off period, typically based on Lisa's experience in this business, is the drop-off period typically goes in the morning from 7 to about 10. And then on the other side of the day, the pickup time usually starts at about 3 and runs to closing. So, the pickup and drop-off is staggered. You're not going to run into any kind of serious traffic problems or people all coming together at this location at one time. It's staggered, so from a safety standpoint, that works out well. But in terms of, again, the dogs being out in the enclosure, in the noise issue, they'll go out 10 at a time. And again, in terms of any kind of, incessant barking, these are dogs. They're going to bark. And so from time to time, there's going to be some noise. But I think, what we're concerned about is just the incessant din of barking. It's going on all day. And certainly, we understand and appreciate the concerns that any of the neighbors would have with respect to that issue, but some of the neighbors might be 100, 200, 300 feet away. Lisa and her staff are right there on top of it. She's right with the dogs. The last person in the world that wants incessant barking and that constant noise is Lisa and her staff. She's sensitive to that. Another thing I should point out is that in the course of taking dogs in, there's absolutely, a comprehensive application that has to be filled out by all of the applicants, and they have to profile each dog in terms of, their general disposition, things like aggression, constant barking, that kind of, how well they get along with other dogs. So everybody that walks through the door isn't necessarily going to end up being a client of Lisa's, because she's got to be sensitive to the fact that as she goes forward operating this business, she's got to be a good neighbor. And she has a problem with dogs and incessant noise and all that kind of thing, it's only going to hurt her in the long run. So, again, as I look back on the last hearing, those seem to be the two issues of greatest concern, and I hope I've addressed them to your satisfaction.
All right, thank you. I know some of the board members did go for a site visit. I wasn't with them. I did go later that week, and my concern was, one of the concerns is when I went out there and I saw the area, it had just rained and there was a big puddle. I mean, it was like 10 by 10 of water that just sat there, because the way the parking lot's contoured, it slopes away from the building, and then from the street it slopes to the building, so it just kind of leaves, the water just kind of sits there and then just has to evaporate, I guess. It not graded very well out back there. So that was a concern of mine. Just wondering how that would work with whatever system you're going to have there for the dogs to go out and to go to the bathroom, so that it just wouldn't smell, not the solid waste, but the liquid waste. That was a concern.
Can we respond to that quickly?
Sure.
As I mentioned, we get into the infield mix, and again, this is stuff that is super absorbent, so in terms of, your concern obviously would be runoff. Other than, 100-year flood events, we're not going to have any runoff. The fact of the matter is the dogs are going to be out there when weather permits. Nobody's going out when it's 5 degrees below zero, to hose down an area where a dog has just urinated. But as a practical matter, wherever possible, the dogs will be you know, their areas will be hosed down. And again, as I mentioned, the exercise area will be plain so that there's runoff into the area where the infield mix is. And so, other than really extreme situations, you're not going to encounter any kind of runoff. And I would submit to you that in a situation where it's that extreme, the urine's going to be diluted anyway. You know, it's not as though we're talking about 40 dogs. I know it's a lot of dogs, but as I say, in an area where you would be concerned about runoff and puddling and that kind of thing, I think as a practical matter, you know, the danger of any kind of a problem is in my view, remote, because it just as a practical matter, there's just not that much waste, in my view, that you have to be concerned with.
Well, I was just concerned because it doesn't really run off, it just kind of sits there, so that was the problem. But I did speak to the Board of Health agent, and he said, I asked him how he felt about it, and he said that, well, if everything ran off the parking lot and into the soils, he said it would act like a septic system that normally works. Everything's filtrated through the soil, so it doesn't, after so many feet, then it's purified. But just to sit there, so I was just wondering about odors, and I was also wondering, you know, will this be taken up and replaced every so many weeks or months or days? Or?
Every day, the outside pen would be sanitized. I actually was able to find a cleaner that I provided some literature on. I had forwarded to Jack and Stephen, I believe, that it's not only environmentally safe, but it kills bacteria. Bacteria is what causes odors. So obviously, I'll be meticulous about the cleaning out there, and that'll stop any odors from occurring.
And it seems like that area that you're gonna have enclosed was also over some of the septic covers?
It's
that-
before
for
the
building?
septic.
Oh, so those covers aren't,
It's not
not
enclosed
gonna
in
be
the
covered?
pen. Right.
Okay, all right.
We had some cones out there that day, but they kept blowing around, so it was very windy.
Yeah, I couldn't make it that day, so I went, I think it was a couple of days after, and I just went out, I looked the neighborhood over. There were a couple of houses that are nearby, a lot of the houses are further off the road, but there are a couple that are closer. It's just a couple of houses there. And I did observe that. Does anybody on the board have any other questions?
Just had a question on that, the infield mix, that's gonna be on the edge, you said, how wide of a,
It'll actually be, the whole pen will be made up of it. So it'll be probably at least 3 to 4 inches thick, and then AstroTurf will go on top of that, so the dogs aren't obviously eating the soil, and it'll make it easier surface to disinfect.
so
So the whole containment, so it'll be the stockade fencing, and then there'll be a wooden border built around so that, you know, the mix isn't coming out from underneath between the asphalt and the fence. And that'll just be all contained at least a few inches thick anyways, and then the AstroTurf over the top of it.
I thought that you would have.
so,
No, this whole thing will be filled in.
Okay.
I guess, so.
Yeah, we got our signals mixed here. My understanding of, if there would be on the perimeter, you know, an area where this material would be located.
Right.
To allow for the runoff. And Lisa just indicated that if that's what you want, we'll do it. But as I say,
It's gonna be almost like a big sandbox. You know, if you look at a sandbox, it has a wooden border, and then the whole thing of it is filled with sand. This would be the same idea. Infield mixes sand, silt, and clay. It's very absorbent. It's known to hold at least 2 inches of moisture an hour. It's what they use in horse rings, so it's as far as holding the most moisture, it's the best product to use.
So if you had the turf on top, you're saying it would go through the AstroTurf and then?
Yes, yep, that's all perforated.
Oh, okay, I thought it was solid AstroTurf.
No,
Okay,
it's,
I
it's
gotcha.
perforated, like if you almost look at like the back of a carpet, you'll see like the little weavings in between. So the water will be able to flow through as well as the disinfectant and be able to kill the bacteria in the dirt. And then, obviously, if the dirt's looking like it's starting to deteriorate and needs to be cleaned out, I don't know how often that'll be, because it'll all depend on how many dogs there are.
Where's the
But,
outstanding?
we'll be on top of it as far as maintaining it, changing it out as necessary.
All right, thank you.
As far as the solid waste pickup, how many times a week would you have that done?
Out of the dumpster or out of?
Yes.
As often as needed. I mean, the first couple of weeks open, I might only have a few dogs. So the dumpster may not need to be emptied. If it's 40 dogs and needs to be emptied once or twice a week, definitely.
I'll have to come up with something about that.
I guess a couple of my questions. I would like to be assured that there's going to be some kind of maintenance plan with that, you know what I mean? Because unless, you could probably show me another one that's working like this, I'm not really sure, how that's going to work. I appreciate the fact that it looks like you've done some research on this, but I'd like to know that, that this is a good system and it's going to work, and this is, essentially, sounds like this is going to be what leaches most of this, or you're making some type of leaching system. Joe, I would love to see some information, on systems that are maybe working for other
There is,
facilities. Because the nature of if you're gonna have 40 dogs there, I don't have anything to compare that to at this point. And I would feel more comfortable going forward knowing there's something that's a little bit like this, or something that has some information like this that can work.
what I'm essentially trying to do is replicate a backyard. I mean, it's on pavement, so there's only so much you can do. I mean, my
Right.
first concern is for the dogs. Obviously, you don't want a dog on straight pavement. It can hurt the pads of their feet. And then, secondly, just the ease of cleaning. What's the easiest thing to clean? So, in short of planting a lawn there, I mean, this is kind of the best-case scenario. And everybody operates their doggy daycare differently. The other woman that runs one in Carver operates it out of her home, so obviously she has a backyard to work with. And it's-
Understandable, she doesn't have the extent of the dogs that you're asking for.
Yeah,
That's my concern. It's a significant jump from, how many dogs do we have at doggy daycare?
10.
10. I mean, we're talking, 3, maybe possibly 4 times as many dogs. I just want to be assured that whatever system is put in, it works. As it evolves, let's say, that you're doing really well there, I want to make sure that it's coming along. And it sounds like you and your lawyer, are there in the same situation where you want it to work. So I would like something, a little bit more, on how that works and how that, if there's some, like, ongoing daycare that which houses dogs in a particular area like that. I mean, we have an interesting situation where it's going to be going over asphalt. So I guess that's my biggest concern with that. And there are neighbors in the area as well. So I just want to be able to assure them that this won't be a concern. And I think it's a great resource of you using the building for that, but I want to be assured that this is going to work.
Mr. Chair, through you, to our new planner, the documents that you brought up to us, I didn't see them in my packet ahead of time. Was that something that was dropped off to us today?
No, sir, that was actually provided to us a while back.
Okay.
We did in fact review those with the staff intermittently as some board members came in and was revealed or shared with them. It wasn't necessarily a full packet at the time. We did receive subsequently information about the disinfectant brands or the sanitization methods. You'll see that as the last page in your packet. It does appear to not necessarily come from a industry leader or a scholarly. It looks to be more of a blog. So we're hoping for more concrete or more information before we presented the full package. Similarly, we did not receive a statement from the animal control officer, which we were hoping to receive beforehand as well. So it was an incomplete package up until this morning.
Okay, so I guess one of my questions, did Board of Health see this, the lavender, the cleaning agent, I'll leave it at that 256 disinfectant. Did the Board of Health comment on this particular?
The health
Cleaner.
agent did review that and
Okay.
did comment on it. However, it wasn't an endorsement. It was just simply an interesting inclusion, simply.
Okay. I guess my
Pardon?
concern would be is, I don't know, any of these chemicals that is part of this disinfectant. So I'm curious on if that has any effect, because you're using it to disinfect what's on this new surface that we're doing. This could and will run off the parking lot into our,
That's the one for interior one. There's a wishy-wash, which is for outside use, and
This
that's
one here?
environmentally safe. It has the cleaning effects of bleach, but without the harmful chemicals.
okay.
And not only is it safe for the pets, where you don't have to rinse it, but it's also safe for the environment.
And other than the statement that's here, do we know what the makeup of it is? Because the one that you have for the interior has, it looks like part of the ingredients. I don't know if the page got cut off.
It's calcium hypochlorite, a chlorine-based disinfectant that uses the same sanitizing principles as bleach, but without the harmful side effects.
So I'm gonna assume it's okay. I'm no expert on it. I don't know how to address that. My concern is the runoff. I understand you came up with a new type of surface that you're gonna be using. I do agree with my board member that I'd like to see some type of maintenance plan that's gonna be on that, on how periodically that would be changed, whether it's every month, every week. I'm sure that if you have 40 dogs, that it would be more changed at a more rate. But just the maintenance plan, I know that I asked for that last time, on how that maintenance plan was gonna be put in place. I do like the idea of this new absorbent surface that you're proposing. I'm not familiar with it at all, so. You said, counsel, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that it's used at the parks?
Yes. Yeah, and again, it's just, it's super absorbent, and so, I mean, literally, when the Red Sox play and they're having a problem with the weather and it starts to puddle in the infield, they use this stuff because it soaks it right up and makes the water disappear. It's a lot quicker than just throwing dirt, but that's the material, literally the material that they use.
And for my knowledge, with you've obviously looked at this product for your client. Has that ever been used in this particular application that you know of?
No, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't
Say
know.
anything?
that's all right.
Well, I'm Graham Rogers.
If you just come up here, sir, that'd be awesome. Just your name, and if you could speak to it, that's gonna really help.
Okay. My name's Graham Rogers, and I've been in the sand and gravel business myself for 26 years, and I've delivered a lot of this material. It's a sand, silt, clay mixture. Horse corrals, riding rings, infield mix for baseball diamonds or whatever. And like her lawyer says, it does do a very good job at drainage. You take a horse riding ring with however many horses in there, they're gonna do the same thing.
Sure.
I've been in these places. I've dumped a lot of this material there. Really not a big puddling issue. As far as the drainage goes, the research that I looked up, which I'm not as thorough as Lisa, but pea stone, it just kind of flows through. Sand as well. This with the clay is an absorbent. It's clay. I mean, if you buy kitty litter, it's dry. You add water, it gets moist, but it absorbs. You see what I'm saying? So, with that being said, we assumed that would be the best bet and the answer that you were all looking for. as far as maintaining it, I mean, it's definitely gonna be a trial basis. I mean, if it has to be replaced every month or quarterly or every 6 months, depending, I really don't think it's gonna show an odor issue. As far as the border that we have in mind, I mean, unless we get a significant amount of rain, like typhoon or something, I really don't see a lot of runoff. It's very absorbent.
Okay, so, and I appreciate your input
Right.
for what you do and what you have there, so I would ask you this, to address more of the issue as this is absorbed into this base that we have,
Right.
okay? And it's gonna restrict because of the clay contact on it going elsewhere,
Right.
running off. That's a good thing. But it's gonna stay there and get saturated. This is an outdoors, area that we're talking. So the maintenance of that, and the more necessity of that being changed, I would feel, because of the content of the waste, would be part of that maintenance thing that I'd be looking for. I know it's gonna be a trial by base because we don't have nothing to go by. This is a unique situation where you're using this type of surface for, on top of tar. These riding places, I don't know if they have concrete underneath them or not. I don't know if they're indoor units or outdoor units, I don't know.
Yeah, it's used in both, areas, outside units, indoor units. Whether or not they have concrete under them, I don't know as well either. But I honestly, like some of these horse places, it's like a yearly thing. We may scrape it down, remove it, bring in fresh material. Maybe some people have a lot more horses, or maybe people have more dogs. So if it need be to be removed, I'm
So
kind of hoping to set it up.
I
to
appreciate that.
remove
So
it.
I'm
Again, that
gonna
would
wanna
fall into,
cease,
the maintenance.
yeah, I'm gonna wanna see something in our decision that states a trigger, some type of trigger, and I'll look for your counsel or yourself to provide that to us on something that's gonna mandate that that's changed. Whether it's an odor issue, whether it's a time frame every quarter, or something like that, is something that I'm gonna look for part of our decision, part of your maintenance thing, okay? I'll take from the gentleman that you brought in, that this stuff is very absorbent, it's gonna maintain everything on site. You just alleviated a whole lot of issues that I had with the runoff,
Yeah.
so that's a
Let me
great thing.
suggest that, the manufacturer should have some idea as to what capacity this material has.
I agree.
So we'll just try to find out, just give them an example, we've got an enclosed
It's
area
probably by
this large,
square
we've got
footage.
40 dogs, and so what do you recommend in terms of the useful life of this material, and we'll get back to you with
It'll
it.
probably be in a square footage area
Sure,
type thing or
sure.
something like that.
And then whatever they recommend, we'll do
But
it.
it is crucial,
Sure. No,
for it
yeah,
to
we
be
get it.
known that
Yep.
it's being put over
Yep.
a surface that's already
Yeah, you
altered.
just, you want it to be effective while it's there.
Right,
And, it would be nice to know how often now, if you don't mind me asking you a question, you came up to represent her and help her. You strip this off, you said per, however many horses, if they have more horses or less. Now, is this something where it's gonna have to be removed by her through a waste system? Or is it gonna be more of a construction thing where you're taking it out completely, remove it? This maintenance plan would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, what I've seen in the past with the horse rings and the baseball fields and whatnot, guy will come in with like a skid steer machine of some sort, scrape it down, load it into a truck,
A dumpster or
bring
truck.
it back, make up fresh material through a screening plant so it mixes well, bring in new material, spread it out evenly. I've been to some pretty busy horse farms, once a year. It's a big thing. Baseball fields, a lot of fields get redone once a year. Granted, there's not kids going to the bathroom in the field, but
No, I appreciate it, because of our unique situation of being
Right.
over the asphalt, it would be nice to know that it can be done. You know?
Yes.
And it's not gonna be a terrible cost for her, but yet
Right.
it's a necessary evil that has to, if it
Yes.
has to be removed, we need to kind of get an idea how often it has to be removed, what type of mechanism is gonna be used to remove it.
Yep.
And, where it's gonna go, where it's gonna get dumped. It would be nice to know exactly how much the waste company is going to charge you and what the recommendation is for how much, the matter waste has to be removed, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not well-versed in poop removal, but there must be, an amount that has to be removed regularly so that you don't end up, offending yourself and the other people who are there with their dogs and stuff like that. So I'd like to know that as well, how often they think it's necessary. Like you said, at the beginning, you're not gonna know how much you're gonna have, but let's say that you get to maximum capacity, it would be really good, for us to also have that as well. A good idea of how much has to be removed on a regular basis.
I would say as far as a dumpster thing goes, pretty much you sign a contract on a monthly statement. So as far as like the solid waste would go, they typically come out once a week. Whether the dumpster needs to be emptied or not, I know they do it in my garage. And if need be, that they would need to come out 2 or 3 times, we would definitely.
Well, I
make
know
that
it would
adjustment.
definitely change like in the summertime.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there's people in this room that have multiple dogs.
Yeah.
Myself, having multiple dogs, I know the situation that you're in and what's gonna have to be removed in order to keep everybody in the area happy. And again, like you said, you brought a great case that you don't wanna offend anybody in there or bring, or have these waste problems, so you have a nice, clean operation. Well, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Well,
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Chair, through you, to the applicant, have you talked with the dog officer since our last meeting? I apologize for that. It is a town thing that we should be here to serve you, so I do apologize for that. Not happy because I'm looking for her input. So I can't comment on anything that she has, other than what you've stated to us, that you've tried to talk to her. We've got nothing, so that's not a good thing.
Mr. Chair, a request was made to the chief of police that the animal control officer submit in time for this meeting a statement, and we did not receive one.
And I don't think we're doing the applicant any justice by not getting the information for her or allowing her to go through the process that we've put in place on previous doggy daycares, and that information of the oversight. So for that, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We will follow up, trust me. Other than that, I'm good for right now. Did you have a timeline? I'm gonna ask the monkey in the room. Do you have a timeline of when you can get this maintenance thing together and be able to provide that documentation to us so I can be comfortable with that and also some of the other questions that were asked? Do you have, I'm sure you want to get up and running and go to business.
If, by the next hearing, whenever, if that's what you need it by, absolutely.
The sooner the better for the documentation for us.
Okay.
You can provide that.
When is the next hearing?
We're
In 2
looking up.
weeks.
That's the 26th
The 26th.
or the 9th of January.
Oh, the 26th, yeah, I don't know if we're gonna,
I don't think we've got any choice.
we won't be here. Yeah, the 9th of January,
I
probably.
wouldn't be here the 26th anyways, it's a special day.
Choice. I'll see if they approve a conditional even.
So you're looking at, our next hearing for you will be the 9th. So that gives you plenty of time to get your maintenance agreement together, address some of the other concern that the board members had and whatever else we have, and whatever Stephen has.
And especially get feedback.
Yeah, that's an issue. I'm good for now.
All right, anybody else?
No,
We all
Steve?
set?
So you're
Okay.
just
I'll be sure to talk to the health agent.
You
as
really
well.
want to know, like, the maintenance of the infield mix and how often that needs to be changed out?
Yes.
And what you're going to be, you know, capable of doing and providing for us on paper what you would do
Okay.
for that.
So a set,
But I think that's,
it's, there's a lot of foresee in this. You're gonna have to come up with some type of time frame based on the experts for the soil on this type of content and say, okay, as it stands now, we're proposing in our maintenance agreement, we'll change out all the soils semi-annually or annually, or as directed, or what have you, you know?
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the fact that
there must be other facilities that have that many dogs that, well, again,
They
our
do,
problem is it's on the asphalt.
exactly, like, you won't believe how many I've gone to, and like dog parks, Kingston just set up a dog park recently, near the Kingston Collection, and all they use is pea stone. But again, you know, it's off to the side near the landfill, so there is a grassy area. My best case scenario is to try to simulate a lawn.
Yep.
You know, and to also keep the dogs, you know, protection for them as well, and the easiest surface to clean. I was able to find through research this sanitizer that's gonna eliminate and kill any bacteria. So that should hopefully make cleaning the soil less, you know, because it should keep down odors, it should keep down bacteria, and protect the dogs as well as the environment.
Yeah, it's in a kind of a difficult situation, isn't it? It's absorbing what we kind of want to run away, so it doesn't end up going down through, you know, the system under the asphalt. So that's exactly why we want to make sure that, you know, this is going forward, this will work, and work for you as well. It's like, it's a unique situation, you know, because ultimately, like you said, you could, you know, put in a yard, you know, with a sand basin, and that would do the very, very same thing. I suppose you wouldn't keep any grass after a while, because you'd be constantly replacing it, but,
Right.
but, that's, you know, why we're hoping that, you can do a little bit more of that research, and you can get some, good solid feedback documented, so that we can, you know, watch it grow, you know, in a good direction. January
So
9.
we're off to January 9th, is it? But,
But this is a public hearing, so we'll open
Thank
this
you.
up to the public. If anybody, any
don't know if you
abutters
have
or
anything.
anybody is here that have any questions or concerns, if you could come forward and speak into the microphone over here, please. Give us your name and address, if you would, please.
Robert Kirkland, 20 Montello Road. I had a question, were you gonna walk any of the, was Lisa gonna walk any of the dogs, you know, around outside or down through the neighborhood? Or is it just gonna be remain in the pen?
Good question.
Yeah, any other questions, or?
Well, I am still concerned about the dog barking. I mean, we did meet on the walkthrough, and she says she's gonna do what she can, which, I mean, I don't know. It's pretty concerning. And, what was the third thing? Barking. Walking. Oh, and the dumpsters. Is there any way we could do what happened with Tractor Supply, that the dumpsters would only be emptied between 8 and 5? Because we have problems with other places, they come at like 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, it's not the owner of the business's fault, but that's when, if the companies knew that they couldn't come during those hours.
Okay, we could write that in as a condition,
Okay.
so that, okay. If you have, they can step up and answer your questions.
Do you know who the contractor is that you have the problem with?
There's like 4 different companies there, and when they switch companies, see, the problem is, once they switch companies, then we start the process all over again. All of a sudden, they're coming in the middle of the night, and they have to get on their dumpster company until
get straightened out.
Sure. Oh, we can work with that.
But if, he had a couple of, he had 3 questions, that was one of them. If you could answer the 2 others. The first question he had was about walking the
Dog
dogs,
walking.
if you're gonna walk them around outside the facility, outside the fenced area.
Nope, once they're in daycare, that's where they stay. They're either inside in their enclosed play yards or outside in that pen, go in the bathroom, getting some fresh air and back in.
And then I think the other question he had was about the dogs barking, but you did say that you would have 10 dogs out there at a time. You would have somebody with those dogs
Correct.
and to.
If I may, if we had a child daycare center here, you know, we're not talking about dogs, we're talking about kids, and you got 40 kids. If the kids are out in the back play area, they're gonna make a lot of noise, you know, and it's incumbent upon the people in charge to make sure that the noise level is controlled so that, you know, the people in the area aren't driven crazy. It's no different, you know, with whether it's kids or dogs, you're gonna have a certain level of noise, and Lisa's job is to make sure that within reason, you know, that issue is contained and addressed on times or occasions. When a truck comes in, you know, whatever, you know, the dumpster isn't there at 3 o'clock in the morning, it comes at 10 in the morning, and the dogs get all worked up. You know, the dogs are going back inside if they're barking. And this is just common sense. As I mentioned earlier, they are right on top of the dogs. If there's incessant barking, the people that are going to go craziest are Lisa and her staff, because they don't want to listen to it. So they have a built-in incentive to address that issue on an ongoing basis for reasons I think that are obvious.
Any other questions or concerns by anybody nearby? No, seeing nobody come forward. And if there's no more questions by the board, maybe we'll continue this hearing until the 9th. So I need a motion.
May I interject, Stephen? Just that the applicant goes away with a clear understanding of what they have to provide, so you're not just adding stuff every meeting, you know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe you want to reiterate it, because I wasn't even clear what you're looking for. The list of items, do you have one, Stephen? Stephen has one, I think.
Well, I was aggregating that as it was being stated, but not least of which a maintenance plan that speaks to the outside, what we've been calling endearingly the piddle pad. How often that might have to be repaired or replaced, under what conditions that needs to be repaired or replaced. We're also interested in learning about the dumpster and making certain that they're not removed during ambient hours. I'm going to reach out to the health agent to make certain that the chemicals that are cited there are researched and are not hazardous to animal or environmental life, and looking for a follow-up, or at least a contribution from our animal control officer. If I've missed anything from the board, I'd be very glad to add to the list.
I'm good with that. That's pretty much everything that we discussed.
Mhm.
Do you have any questions, through you, Mr. Chair, do you have any questions? Are you clear on, for our next meeting, what we're looking for? You obviously have some stuff to do, and we have a couple things to do.
Okay.
I do want to apologize, I wasn't able to make the site walk. I had a personal emergency, so.
Mr. Cole, can I email you tomorrow?
I'd be very
Just so
glad if
that
you did
we're all on the same page.
Yes, sir.
They gave him a business card.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to January 9th at 7 o'clock for Lisa Crow, 160 North Main Street.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. I think you're-
All right, the next is the public hearing that we started. Let me read the public hearing notice. In accordance with the provisions of the Town of Carver zoning bylaw, the Carver Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, December 12th, 2017, at 7:15 PM in the Carver Town Hall, Meeting Room 1, on the application of Edaville Land Holdings requesting site approval pursuant to sections 3100 of the Carver zoning bylaw for a property located on Pine Street in Carver, Mass. Plans prepared by Arthur F. Borden and Associates Incorporated dated November 2nd, 2017, showing the paving and associated drainage on an existing parking lot on 2 sheets for said development. Any persons interested in wishing to be heard should appear at the time and place designated. A copy of the plan is on file at the town clerk's office and may be reviewed during normal business hours. Carver Planning Board, Bruce Mackey, Chair, and it was published November 24th and December 1st of 2017, the Carver Reporter. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mackey, how are you? I'm John Deli Priscoli, the owner of Carver Land Holdings in Edaville, as we'll refer to it as Edaville, perhaps is the easiest way. With me tonight is Joe Antonellis, my counsel on this, and Brenda Johnson, who we all know is the GM of Edaville, and Arthur Borden, of course, on the civil side. So I'm going to open the presentation just by bringing the board up to speed of what we're doing there, and just kind of recap for the benefit of folks at home and the board members. And I'm glad you're here, Jack, because you have such a history, and so we hand it off to Steve. He'll have a good tutor there on all what's happened on all this. So as you know, Edaville, as you know, it is the primary parts of Edaville is this master plan right here. And over the years, as you know, that the arrangement has been, and this was established through the building inspector and through various decisions, both with the board and the Department of Inspections, that we developed a berm, which is, that you've all seen, which is in front here. And it was understood that everything that happens on the Edaville side of the berm is really between ourselves and the building department, as far as which buildings we're building and everything else. As you know, we've gone in there and built a lot of buildings over the last couple of years. They've all been inspected, they've all got occupancy permits, and they're all operating tonight even. And so what we wanted to do is, and Mr. Antonellis will get into the verbiage, but we wanted to basically acknowledge all that. At the same time, you had asked that we would come back when the time came that we wanted to do other improvements outside of the berm. And that's what we're doing here tonight, primarily, but I wanted to familiarize with the board with the whole scope. As you know, over the years, we also developed a very nice landscape strip along the front, along Pine Street here, and put flowering trees, lighting, and consolidated the entrances, made approaches, and all that's in there, the lines and everything else, and it's all working very, very well. There's never been any traffic problems. Everything is working the way we had all hoped and expected, and people are very happy. I mean, for the record, people are now, because of the international brand of Thomas, people are coming from all over the country and all over the world now to visit Edaville and really putting the park on the map. So a lot of people are coming to enjoy Carver, enjoy the town, and see, visit other businesses in the surrounding areas. So it is important that we further enhance our front door here. So we have the berm, we have the grass strip with all the lighting and all the improvements that we made. And the other piece that we want to familiarize the board with, that we are also have worked on an informal basis, soon to be formalized with the Conservation and the Board of Appeals, is at the end of this parking lot is we are proposing a solar array. The difference with this solar array versus any other solar array that's being done here in town of this magnitude, which is a half a meg, is that all this electricity is going to be used by Edaville. It's not for sale. It's to make Edaville green. People ask us these questions. What are you recycling? How green is it? People today are interested in those factors. And so we've met with the Conservation Commission. They've encouraged me to move forward with this. I've got my interconnection permit from the government and the solar people, and would like to walk through that and just make sure we're all on the same page with what we want to do there. But I want to make sure you understand that this solar array is 100% for Edaville. And Will, since this is your field, Edaville is now all prime metering. So what happened is I invested a substantial amount of money last year to get rid of all the individual meters and everything else at Edaville. And if you've noticed, they've rebuilt all the lines coming down the road, and that is because we have 1 meter for the entire park, and we are responsible for all the infrastructure within the park. So we own all the, and we paid for all our own transformers, our underground, and everything else, which was in anticipation of building the solar array. So that's where we intersect with the, with Eversource. So I wanted to, so that's the overall master plan. And this, by the way, this master plan is nothing new. This is the same master plan that we've shared with you over the years. And we're just basically solidifying everything that we're doing. And I wanted to come back and as I say, now we're doing something outside the berm, which now would involve, obviously, we wouldn't necessarily be here. We would be on the solar, but if we were just doing more projects in back, which we intend to do. We're making every year we're adding and adding and adding more attractions, more partnerships with Mattel toys, and like the Thomas and other brands that you're familiar with. So, and to make Edaville really a destination. The parking lot. So this is the entrance that we're all familiar with the archway and everything that we have. This is, all these curb cuts, there's 2, those are the existing, nothing's changing in any of that. Nothing's changing on any of the landscaping that's been added, nothing. We're simply paving the existing parking lot. And we're not paving the entire parking lot, we're paving about 2/3 of it. The final third that goes down towards the back, we're gonna leave gravel, and we're leaving that so we can have RVs and larger vehicles. We have usually, we'll have bus tours and big buses and things of that nature. Those have to go down here, and it's also an unloading area for when we order rides or big equipment gets dropped off for whatever purpose. It's a good area to have, a gravel area for that loading and unloading in the much larger or combination vehicles. A lot of times you'll get people that come in with an RV and it's almost like a caravan, you have the RV with a car and a trailer and everything else. So we have to have a place, they obviously can't park in here, So this is for the traditional cars right here. So this plan, I asked Arthur to develop drainage, which Arthur will walk through tonight with you, and to develop a drainage plan that would work and meet all the requirements. And that's essentially the sum and substance of it, that in the solar array, and basically acknowledging what we've done at Edaville, which you already know, and we've already been approved and blessed by everybody. We just think we might make a nice comprehensive site plan that addresses all that. So with that, I'd like to have Arthur just walk through the technical points of the drainage, and then I'd like Mr. Antonellis to speak with you. I've known Joe for almost 35 years, and does a lot of permit work with me up in Metro West. And I've asked him to help me with this, to get this into a fashion that all the permits are in order and everything is correct, and the board is satisfied, the public is satisfied, and we're satisfied. So with that, Arthur, could you walk through the drainage piece of this for us? And then we'll...
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a question for John before you
Sure.
let Arthur start. Is this application just solely for the parking and the drainage, or does this also include in your application for the solar array?
Well, I don't know if I did it correctly, to be honest with you, with the solar, so if we have to, we worded it so it's an all-encompassing site plan. I don't know if there's enough in there, Joe, or not. If the board thinks I need to, add something, I'm assuming that this hearing will have questions, and we may have to get, I know Fuss and O'Neill has a few open issues that aren't gonna get resolved tonight anyway. We could always, file additional paperwork, if you see. I'd like to work with you on that.
I just want to make sure that your application that we stated for the public hearing was done correctly, and it's for the parking lot, or the parking lot and the solar array combined, that's all. And I'll look for anybody's direction on
I
that.
can help a little bit. Since Stephen, I accepted this before Stephen started, and John, I was handed your application. There's no notation here about solar at all.
Okay.
So in my opinion, if John wants to move forward with the solar, it'd be a separate application.
Okay.
But maybe we could run them concurrently so we don't burn up, you know.
Yeah, but you're
We'd
gonna have to
have to-
re-advertise.
We'd have to
Oh,
advertise.
no, I
it, that's
understand
it.
that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we could, when we have the follow-up meeting for here, maybe that could be the opener.
That's true. You might be able to.
I'm just
pull
saying,
that.
we, you
Yep.
know, even if you, just to use your time effectively and.
That's a
and-
good point.
Yeah, maybe we could do
I
that.
just don't want to put a burden on the board with, you know, all these multiple, you know, we can combine them, because really the issues are all related. I mean, it's all site plan, it's all the same property, it's all the same impacts you know, from a, if that's okay with the board. So I'll work with the planner and make sure everything's, so to answer your question, Will, through the
Kind
chairman, I guess tonight would be the opener for the parking lot.
Thank you. I just want to be clean
Yeah,
with
clear,
it.
and I think that's important, I'm glad you specified that. But I also want to be clear of what the ultimate plan is, just so, you know, in full disclosure. We have a little time here between now and next season, so that's why I'm starting now to work through all this, so hopefully we can have everything we need, because the solar is going to take other steps too. It doesn't, it requires, just so the board knows, the solar requires the conservation, it also requires the Board of Appeals, because of some very, you know, for all the reasons you're all familiar with. So it's not a quick, so it's all gonna work, but I wanted to get the planning board completely comfortable with everything first, and then move to the next step and the next step and all that. I just thought that was the most prudent way, rather than,
I just don't want to have them confused.
Right.
If we're just doing the parking lot with the drainage and stuff that was in the public hearing, I don't want to confuse it with other parts that you're going to expand to. I want to get this out of the way, and then we go to that. I
right, well,
think
the only
it's
thing, the only
important.
thing that would be expansion, that would be outside of the berm would be the solar, or the expansions
Yep.
inside have always been accomplished through that, but we would like, we just want to make sure when we word this thing, that it reflects what we've always been doing, that.
Right, so on this application, just so I'm clear, and I want to make sure I'm clear with you, John, and also with staff and the board, this application is solely for the parking lot, not for the solar. So I don't want to commingle, because if we start talking, just to be clear, if we start talking about the solar array and where it's going to be located and all this other stuff, we didn't advertise correctly for it.
Right.
The application wasn't done correctly for it. So
I concur.
to do them concurrent is kind of difficult, because we really can't talk about that stuff, because we didn't advertise to the public about the solar array. We know you're coming with it. You've always been open with us and telling us where you're going with Edaville and the steps. I just want to make sure that we're right on target, what's been advertised.
Can I interject? I think, yes, it is, it will require a separate application. If you could possibly get it in by the first of next week, you could publish and then have them both, the continuance of this.
We will.
And the new one on the 9th, which
We'd
would
have
be
to open
perfect.
up another
Yeah,
public hearing for
Well,
the.
we could read
solar
both
system.
opening, we could read the, if, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, we could read the continuance and the
Yes,
opening.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not probably been, I'm sure it's been done before where there's
And that's,
multiple, on bigger projects.
so it's clean.
Yeah, that's fine. But on this parking lot piece, just so you know, it doesn't, you know, it does affect the overall Edaville, it always did, you know, because it was always the agreement and the understanding and the wishes and what's documented when you go back over the 15 years, that everything on this side of the berm requires review, everything on the inside is what it is, but I just want to memorialize all that at the same time, because that's all part of it. That's separate from the solar, though. Okay? All right, with that, can I move to Arthur, is that okay?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
I'm good. I just wanted to be clear on it.
All right, thank you.
Arthur Borden from Arthur Borden and Associates. Drainage plan we prepared, similar to what was installed several years ago. When we first did the gravel parking out here, we did a series of leaching catch basins along the street here. The basins were leaching, the pipe that connects each one of them is perforated. It's laid level, so there's no flow one way or the other. It acts as a large equalization system. The water can, if one basin fills up a little bit faster, the water can seek its level and go to the next basin. We're proposing really to add to that. The site grades from right about in the middle here, grades very gradually, little less than 1% towards Pine Street here. and a little less than 1% in this direction. So we did two separate systems that are connected to the existing system. So it's the same idea. There's leaching catch basins, perforated pipe connecting them, then at the appropriate spot right near one of the existing basins, we'll tie it in. So that this whole system here will tie into the existing street drain. Same over here. It's a little bit bigger area, so we have more basins. But again, they tie into a leaching catch basin out front here. So the whole system, the water can back and forth to what it's got to do. All the piping is, as I say, is perforated with stone around it. We provided calculations to Fuss and O'Neill. I know Sam didn't get them. They went to somebody else, but I will email that whole package to him first thing in the morning so that he has it. There were questions regarding the stormwater checklist, how we treating each thing. We looked at this under the stormwater checklist as being redevelopment because it's really what it is. We don't have to regrade. We don't have to tear down trees. We're simply paving what's already there to make something that's more attractive for Edaville, something that they can do away with their little traffic cones to direct people because now there'll be painted lines and painted islands and painted spaces that are, 10 by 20 spaces, 24-foot wide aisles, numerous handicap spaces to comply with the handicap code. Right now, there are 4 lights in the parking lot that run from about this entrance directly to the entrance to the park. What we plan to do is to take 2 of those poles, relocate them to the middle here, the other 2 to the middle over here. I believe John told you the LED lights.
Yes.
So that what's there now pretty much effectively lights what's there, but because there'll be, they'll not necessarily be in a prime location for this layout, we'll pick spots where, they can be right at the cross point of 2 lines, not in a parking space. And 2 poles here and 2 poles over here with lights on both sides, just like these are now. The lights go off when the park closes. They're not on all night long. Other than that, I don't know what else to
Well, I just wanted to say that we did go through and we actually worked with the electric company and they did re-fixture everything. And to put the energy efficient LEDs. We're looking to be energy independent there and we're looking to put the proper, and we have to make sure though that when people walk to their cars and you have a busy night and they're walking a distance, they have strollers, they have, and that's the other reason, okay, to pave this is that no matter how good your gravel is, and even though I own my own road grader, and even though I own my own vibratory roller, which I do, you still, every now and then we get a person in there that, accelerates a little too quickly, kicks up some rocks and things, and consequently, that's a little tough for these carriages. We cater to 12 and under families, with smaller children, their parents and grandparents. So it's important. That's one reason for the paving. The second is, as Arthur says, it's a lot tidier. It can park the people more efficiently. And it also, with the lighting and things, it also is much safer and easier for people. So it's really a safety, customer service-oriented thing and providing the proper drainage. And I just think overall it gives a much better appearance and curb appeal. And we have the beautiful grass strip, like I said, the landscaping. So there's a nice piece of landscaping there and the berm. So it's like Arthur says, it's really redevelop, enhancing what we already have. That's essentially what we're doing there. So with that, I think that's good. I mean, and just so, when Fuss and O'Neill did call us, I passed the message to Arthur. Arthur did forward the information. This was several days ago. This wasn't today. This was several days ago. But there's a little disconnect, whether it's with Fuss O'Neill or Arthur or whatever. It makes no difference. We're going to follow up and work with Fuss O'Neill like we always have, and make sure that everybody's happy with Arthur's engineering calcs and so on. So there's not, there's no harm, no foul. But I just want you to know we did provide it, but for whatever reason, I knew this would not happen in one night, so we have to, we have to work through that, and we will. And I look forward to it. I look forward to your input, sir, and whatever you would suggest of improvement. Same way with the board members. With that.
Good evening. Again, Joseph Antonalis, I'm an attorney in my office is in Milford. I've known John for over 30 years and have done quite a bit of work for him in the general Metro West area. I've been fascinated with Edaville Railroad and John's ownership of it. Have good memories of coming here when I was a young kid, and told John that the best ice cream I ever had in my life was the cranberry ice cream with the dark chocolate dip on it, back in, who knows, the 60s sometimes. And I've had the opportunity to bring my family here and share it with my grandson, so excited about the project. And I'm kind of a permitting nut. I love to study the permitting of everything. And when John came with me and told me about what he was doing continuously with the project, I was fascinated. And then I started to read your bylaw and suggested to John that when you got to the zoning board with the solar arrays, that we use that as an opportunity to sort of provide for a master permit moving forward. Because with your overlay zone, while this board has obviously great jurisdiction over the ground and what happens, the uses, as you know, are kind of more related to the zoning board and your overlay bylaw. So I felt that when we went to the zoning board for the permitting of the solar, which is their jurisdiction, that we use that at the same time to provide them with a really good print of what's there now relative to not just the layout of the park, which everybody's familiar with, but the actual improvements that have taken place inside under what was your traditional way of handling it with, as John said, the building inspector dealt with the actual building permits inside, and you've dealt with everything else. But I thought that this would be a good time to blend all of that together, provide a master special permit so that when he wants to come back for any additional uses, if there are other uses that come and are just kind of evolve out of the Mattel issue, that we have a good master permit to go forward with it. So I've encouraged him to put all those solars on this plan tonight and not realize that we didn't get it into the application. By the way, I agree 100% with the summation, so I didn't just mention those solar panels. They're not really there yet. But that was the intent, was to give everybody a final picture of just what John has there going forward in 2018. So we'll be back over to the zoning board. What I hoped is that when we jumped over to the zoning board for that special permit, that we give them a plan that you're all okay with, because I do believe you still have jurisdiction over the site in that respect, because you've had it before. We don't want to eliminate you you can't eliminate you from the process, but I just wanted to pull the boards together in that regard. I thought this was the best way to do it. So that's kind of why I got involved.
Mr. Chair, just for a point of order, Counselor, the solar bylaw falls under the planning board, not ZBA. I think, and I don't know, John, I think what you were alluding to is you may need relief
Right,
from the.
because I don't have the
zoning
200 feet or whatever it is. And that seems like mostly solar arrays end up with the zoning board too.
Then I apologize.
Okay.
I have the bylaw that I thought was your most recent, because it was given to me, and it lists special permit, and it doesn't have the asterisk after it, and that's a Board of Appeals special permit.
Then that's not correct.
Then I've got this off the wrong spot then. So that's been
Okay.
changed?
It never happened, I don't know.
It's always been
I
here.
can't speak to where you got that, Counselor, but believe me, it's all solar projects come to these guys.
And I understand that.
John is right, that many of them have to go to ZBA.
Okay.
Because of that setback
All right.
requirement.
Yeah. Well, again, I apologize. I'm usually,
okay. It's
I
not a
didn't
big
come
deal.
down, I didn't
You're
come
in the
down.
right place.
I didn't come down and get a certified copy of the bylaw, but I had checked and was told that I had the right one. So I apologize for that
That's
comment.
okay.
So then I apologize again. So then that application that we file is actually for a special permit, not just site plan, on the solar?
You didn't apply for a special permit on the solar.
It is under a special permit, but it should have been, it's being treated as site plan review,
Okay.
because that's what it really is. So we can, we'll amend that for the next one, for the night. Just housekeeping.
All right, any questions by the board? I do have a question. About the parking lot. So,
You're working with the town manager as well for the runoff on that, is Arthur, or are you working with them? You know, as far as the impact that the runoff of the water is going to have going into the system, they're okay?
Well, it's going into my land. I have.
Oh, so it is going to
yeah.
go back into your land?
Yeah, I have.
And it goes into your own
My
retention
own,
center?
I own the bogs and the retention, everything else, yeah. No,
Well, I
no,
didn't know if that might have been a question that I was going to ask
no,
Sam to
nothing is,
address with that.
I mean, eventually, all water goes somewhere, you know, even beyond, but we're not creating any downstream, in other words, we're not increasing downstream flow, is that, you know.
Okay. I just heard at one point that some of the runoff, not runoff, but some of the pitching was towards Pine Street, so I just didn't know if there was going to be any.
Well, there's a series of catch basins here that are going to be enhanced, and that's all going to be connected and daylighted. So the system that's currently there is only partially built.
Right.
So this will finish the whole system, which will then collect all the water on the paved areas in all events and send it.
All back to you.
Most of it will be, which is what everybody tries to do today, is put it back into the ground. But
Right.
whatever doesn't go back into the ground on a serious event is daylighted into, because since, you may not know this, but I bought the property next door, which is where the solar array is going. That's the old Hannula, well, if you remember, the Hannula bog and that whole thing next door to us. We used to be called the Washburn bog
Yep.
years ago. So we own all that now. That was not the case, you know, I think the last time you looked at this. So land was added, and I added that land for a couple of reasons. One is it was available there. I wanted to talk about solar at some point. I wasn't really sure, but I also wanted to talk about a place to run my water. I mean, my surface water.
So then all of the water will be.
It goes there, and then ultimately it
Go
goes
right
exactly
into
where,
your system.
right, it goes there, and then it goes underneath the street into what was known as the former, I don't know who owns it today, but there's a stream that feeds the Heckler Bog across the street. It goes underneath, and that's how it, you know.
All right, and that's something that you see too as well, that all works properly?
I think that was part of our discussions is.
Yeah, we'll review it.
This may be very clear to the applicant, it's not really presented too clearly in either the history or the specifics of the drainage system and whether or not it's a town system or a private system.
Right. It's a private system, and it's 100% maintained, but
Basically, we would like to see clarification on that. So
Okay. But just so we're clear, Ediville's been in continuous operation since 1947. So there's been a lot of changes over there, and there's a lot of history, and you have to understand, you know, it isn't like somebody's coming in today with a brand, you know, here's 100 acres of land, and this is what we're going to do, and it meets every little, you know, corner of whatever. I mean, this thing has been there a long, long time, and we're constantly trying to improve it. And
Well, I see this as a huge improvement, and that's why I just wanted to make.
But I want to make sure you know
An
that, right?
impact, you know what I mean?
And that's why I bought the extra land.
Manager, you know.
Absolutely.
Was able to work with you if there was any concern to the water runoff on Pine Street, so.
Actually, it's worked quite well. I mean, you know, and there's, for our position is that, you know, we can't correct problems that, on Pine Street that exist that have nothing to do with us. I mean, there are issues on Pine Street that have nothing to do with us. They're already there. We're managing our water with this system, and that's, I mean, I can't fix stuff that's not on my property.
No, my question.
'Cause there is issues on-
Specifically to
Okay.
the water runoff, that's it.
Is it- I
So
mean, I'm
the
sure
water
there's-
runoff's gonna be fine, you know, they're gonna look at it.
Okay.
I see that as a good thing, especially, I was moved at the fact that, you know, you're going from something that can get torn up and ruined, let's say some kids come in there and destroy it some night on you doing donuts or something. You're gonna have a hard time getting, you know, carriages and stuff through that, so, you know, stepping this up and making this a beautiful parking lot that runs off and works properly and doesn't end up having an impact on the street, I think it's fantastic. As always, I think you always go above and beyond.
Well, just to be honest with you, sir, we have had some of those people doing donuts in there, and Brenda's got her binoculars there, and she's bagged a few of them. But you know, the fact of the matter is, it is you know, it is a little bit of an attractive thing for somebody in a go-kart or a four-wheeler or a hot rod car to go in there and you know, and we try to, you know, that's obviously not something we condone. So you're right, it does help it, and you know, and we also, of course, you know, with social media, which is a huge part of the business today, people make comments on social media, and a number of the comments have been very, very flattering about Edaville, but a lot of people are, feel the parking lot isn't really indicative of how good the park is. So that's another set of issues that we need to address. I mean, it's not killing us, but, I want to eliminate any negativity anywhere. And I want to make the guest experience the best it can possibly be, and I appreciate your good words, Kevin. Thank you.
Any other questions by board members? Any comments?
I got a couple, just to run through quickly, and it's just so that way we're ready for the next one. I don't see the light poles on the plan.
Okay?
I don't see, I'd like to see a lighting photo metrics plan for light spillage. Okay. The drainage calcs for the water, I'm sure you're working with Fuss O'Neill on that. For the existing drainage, now that it's all gonna be paved, well, 90% of it, except for the existing area where you want the large trucks, all that runoff used to drain naturally through the parking lot and also through this area. How that's gonna work? I'd like to see how that lays out. You only have one area that you're marking on here for a proposed landscaping. Do you know what you're gonna propose for landscaping there? What type of plants you're gonna put in there and stuff? Just
Well,
put that there.
we're on the plan.
Just on the back corner, right, almost right where your hand was the only part that any proposed landscaping that I
Right,
could see.
what I'd like to do is use similar trees that I've used and maybe some perennials and things. I do, but just so the board knows, I do have irrigation well that I have that I actually inherited when I purchased the Hanula property, and that's what I use for the berm water, because I have to, water that because it gets so hot, and I have that same system. This is all these islands are irrigated. So I can actually have perennials and things out there because I have irrigation. That's not potable water, it's bog water or, whatever they use for the bogs.
Is there anywhere else in the parking lot, and I don't see it there, any other proposed landscaping?
Well, there isn't today,
islands or
and
anything?
there isn't today.
Not today, but
Right,
will you
no.
be doing the parking lot?
No, I really don't want to do that, and there's several reasons why. I mean, if you look at any system, most event-type parking lots are set up this way, football stadiums and everything else, and the reason is they obviously have to put a lot of cars in there, pack them in there, and then make the plowing practical and so on. And it's not like a mall where people are coming in and all that, and there's a lot of, it's just a different system, and we're not asking for anything we don't have right now. If we have to do, I'm going to be candid with you, if we have to do islands and all that, I'm just going to leave it the way it is, because it just doesn't work.
Okay.
All right, you need to know that.
Yeah,
What I am
that's
willing
fine.
to do.
I'm just asking the
Right, no,
questions
no.
because you're gonna take the property, the front entranceway to what now is a, I think, a global destination. You've done such a great job on the facade and everything, and that's why I'm asking the questions. On the facade and the entrance, for that warm feeling going for the family members, and now we're gonna have a blacktop.
Well, no, it's not really not correct. You have the grass strip out front, which is
small grass
irrigated,
strip.
but it's attractive, and you have lighting, and you have the berm, and that can be enhanced, and in between that, you have a parking lot.
Yeah, so I want to be able to, now that it's going to be blacktopped, I want to address it as we're going through this process. That's why we're
Well,
here.
let me ask the question tonight. If it's going to be a situation where islands, grass islands and landscape islands are going to be put in more than what we've talked about here, I'd like to know that tonight, because I'm just not going to pursue it.
Okay. Well, I think
Could we
that-
get a vote on that? Because I don't want to do the brain damage.
John, I'm not going to sit here and be badgered by you because of something that you want to propose, and you want us just to say, go ahead, John, and do it.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just asking for that one,
You're telling me that you want to vote on it.
well, I'm asking you for that
I'm
one
asking
narrow
you-
issue, because I don't want to do all this work, Will. You could appreciate that.
I understand. I've been on this board for a lot of years.
and I've been here a lot of
involved
years.
with this for a lot of
Okay.
years.
If
I'm
it-
asking questions that are proper for this site plan. You're looking to pave this front parking lot.
That's right.
I'm interested in the drainage calcs. You only show one part of landscaping. The existing landscaping that's in the front was done well because that was permitted by this board, by a previous board. I got that, but this is a different permit, John. So if you're looking for, I want it my way, we haven't worked that way in 10 years.
I'm not saying it's my way, Will. I'm just saying from a practical standpoint, okay? I'm not saying it's my way or that, the practical standpoint, for this type of an attraction, this is the way the parking lots are done.
And
If
it's
you
a
look at
question
Gillette
that I'm gonna
Stadium,
ask.
it's the same way.
That's fine. Gillette Stadium is fine. It's on Route 1.
Okay. Well, I just, I'm happy to give you all the calcs and everything else, because we've already done it. I'm happy to give you the landscaping in there and everything else. But if it comes down to where it is in there, Will, it's just, I just can't do it.
I
So
understand.
I just want to be honest with you. I'm not
And
trying
I
to, I'm
appreciate that.
not here saying if you don't do this, do it. I'm just saying I can't do it. It's like saying, if you own this piece of land, we'll entertain this additional piece of land, we'll entertain the subdivision. If you don't own that, then I'm just saying I don't own it. I can't do it. So
Perfectly understand. Perfectly understand. But just understand, these are processes that we've always done it every
course.
single time that you've been through here.
And I want to be transparent, and that's why I wanted to, I don't want to mislead you and say, we're going to burn up 3 or 4 meetings or whatever it is, and go through all these steps, and have it come down to saying, okay, well, everything's fine, but I want these islands. I mean, if that's where we are, I'd like to know that sooner than later. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. If I could just ask a question? If I could just interrupt you?
Go right ahead.
Is it in our bylaws that we have to have islands and parking areas like this, or?
There are certain specifications in the bylaw. I don't have it with me, Mr.
I haven't
Chairman.
looked.
I'm gonna suggest, I think I know where both parties are coming from,
Just a question.
that we have some time, and maybe John and Arthur can relook this and maybe find a few opportunities. Well, they're not a lot, but maybe something.
And
There
I'm
might be an
just,
opportunity.
I'm just saying, Mr. Chair, from
It's a
my point of
pre-existing
view,
parking lot, too.
we can just look at it
Sure.
as we're going through this process. That's why we have the process. If it has to be there because it's part of the bylaw, it's up to this board to make that decision, whether or not we require it or not.
And I have no argument with that whatsoever.
Right.
I'm just asking for the board to give me the direction on that particular item sooner than later. That's all I'm asking.
We'll take a look at it as quickly as possible
Hey,
after this
perhaps,
meeting.
Mr. Chair, that the new planner, who seems very good at this, could meet with John and Arthur and take another look at it.
Not a problem. All right, so we can move on. We can agree that.
Yeah, I mean, Will, I hope you didn't take what I was saying out of order, because I love the relationship we have.
Yeah,
Just so the
We worked
board
hard
knows.
to get
I think we've followed through on everything, and, Ediville's been done a lot for this town.
yep. Another thing that I had was it was a concern of mine, and the parking direction along the Pine Road, the headlights that you have, that is directly coming in, those parking spots, is that, what's the height of that berm?
Are you talking about the main one?
Along the main,
The first big in-turn there?
yep.
Well, there's
Well,
no
let me-
houses across
let me
the street there.
Because because it's just a concern of the
Sure, of course.
lighting overspill onto the neighbors and
Yes.
stuff like that. Along this, you have all these parking spots that
Yes,
you're proposing here, and specifically on this end,
Yeah.
the direction that people are parking. So in other words, when they pull in this way, headlights in, is there a possibility that we can mandate on these ones here that the headlights face towards this parking lot?
I don't know how we'd enforce it, but I could
I
mandate
don't
it.
know either, I'm just gonna throw it
I
out.
mean, we could ask that, but,
I haven't been down there, and I
We
can
haven't had any
guarantee I'll be
complaints.
down there tomorrow, looking at this berm.
Well, it's
See what
really
the
not a
height
berm,
is.
it's a grass strip. They didn't want a berm. Everybody wanted the berm removed, and I removed it.
I
All
remember.
right. That was a big cost, if you remember. I don't know if all these folks here remember that or not, but
I
Jack.
sat on the board, I remember that we did that.
Can Brenda add a?
Absolutely.
Because she deals with it day to day.
We currently park there now at night
Yeah.
during Christmas, and not one neighbor has called me
Thank you.
to complain.
But just so the people at home know, Will, there's no berm there.
Yeah, I haven't been down there in a little while.
It's a
so-
grass strip with trees, lights, and grass.
Let's see, another question I had, can we get a dimension on the plan of the existing unpaved area and have that defined? You wanted to have this area down here that was.
Oh, you mean the
state
leftover
grab-
area?
Yeah.
Oh,
for
sure.
For the staging area and also for the buses and all that other stuff, just to have that more defined on the plan.
Yep.
Let's
And by the way, the water in that, just so we didn't mention it, the water sheds toward the garage out back. That's where that disappears to.
Yep.
There's a pond that catches it back there. Our pond.
And you mentioned it, and I missed it, so which is good. Proposed snow storage areas.
Right.
I don't know, well, not that it's gonna snow here this year, but
Well, who knows?
at least after Christmas Day, you're gonna have.
Well, we have 250 acres of land, and only about 50 of it is used for Edaville. So we have adequate areas, and in that one, remember that one year we had that huge amount of snow here? I actually brought in my end dumps, loaded into that, and brought it into a flat area that I owned outside of the core park, and just let it sit there in a snow pile.
So I didn't know.
So
what
I have
was
ample,
parking
it's
area.
it's unlike a typical situation where you have, your land is so constrained, there's nowhere to go, like something on Main Street here, they have nowhere to put anything. I have acreage, so if I have a situation where it's more than just a typical snow pile, and that gets melted and gets built up, melted, if you have like that huge amount of snow, which was just unbelievable, I just bring my trucks in and move it to elsewhere on the property.
I guess I just want it better defined on the proposed new paving area.
Okay.
Where, if at all, anywhere, you're gonna have the snow storage, that's all.
Okay, sure.
Because that would
Yeah.
better define for the runoff.
Yeah, most likely we would probably put it in the gravelly area and over there, because it would be better to, filter out there.
Those were just the questions that I came up with while.
Lucky we have the acreage to deal with, And once again, Will, please accept any, there was nothing intended to be negative there.
No, you're good. I'm good.
Okay.
Excellent. That's all I have.
Okay, any other board members have any other questions?
Almost set.
I think Will's pretty much covered it. So I'll just open this as a, yes?
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, go ahead,
I just
please.
want to make sure Sam has all.
Oh, that's,
his-
yes,
Yeah, no.
that's
he's
right,
your
yeah.
engineer, and I don't know if he has,
And most of what we were talking about is drainage, and I apologize for the miscommunication. It is, I think it's worth noting at least a little bit, that the configuration of the lot, and you talked about not long islands or directional barriers, it's a little prone to people beelining to the front door. I don't know if there's a way to incorporate some element that would kind of stop people. Right
Well-
now, if the first 40 spaces are taken, you're not gonna go down that center aisle, down to where the cars are and go past them and park. You can shoot straight.
Right.
across, right?
During the way it works in a practical sense, right now, obviously, we're using the cones here. We're going to have the benefit of traffic enhancements, which is the painting of there. We'll still have guides out there managing, because we don't, for that exact reason, we have people there to calm the situation. If you go over there like at a night, like, on a Saturday night, let's say, there'll be 6 younger folks out there with the flashlights with the orange cone that illuminates out there, and they'll be directing people and so on. But with the traffic calming, with the painted lines and a very definitive way of going in there, and with supervision on days like that, that's I think would solve it. I mean,
Well, there's no question you can't solve it. I think we all ought to look at this as an opportunity.
right, to make it better.
Try and take some of those issues that you're having
Right.
now, and could you organize drive aisles, could you organize your lights, could you organize, put small islands, can you incorporate some elements? Don't cost anything, don't make you lose a number of spaces, but might help the operations. Now's the time to do it.
It was never about
I don't
cost.
need to try and-
Anybody that looks at Edaville knows it's not about cost. It's about the practical aspect of it and being able to get the density that we need to get in the peak periods of time, which aren't many days, but when they're there, we want to accommodate. We don't want to have people backed up on 58, like you see with King Richards, then everybody's upset. Here, you have a situation where we get them in there and we manage it. And I'm really proud of Brenda and her crew over there, because there has not been any incidents of even on some very, very busy days. And it's a little bit different than like a sporting event where people go in the games at 10 o'clock, let's say, or 8 o'clock, or whatever the football games are. Edaville is a thing where there's a turn, you know, people come in, it opens at 10 in the morning or sometimes, or 2 in the afternoon, depending on the time of year. And, you know, people come in gradually and they leave, but there are peak times you know, during the day in that. But it's not like,
About the carts and the cars and.
right.
Again, I think we're well served at
Okay.
times.
Well, I appreciate your input, and we'll look into it. Thank you.
With Sam having just said that, if you don't mind me asking, did we ask if there was gonna be some type of painting for, traffic, you know, direction?
There's extensive painting,
Okay.
a very extensive painting. The painting on this is going to be very substantial, both in cost and in appearance.
And that would be something that we get submitted?
Yes.
We'll see it, so we have something to go by.
Yep.
Now, these hatched areas on the plan, that's paint, yeah, I
Yes.
see you have the parking spaces, then you have the dark hatched areas, and that's just painted
Yes.
areas that are just going to be painted, okay.
That was our proposal.
All right, now that everybody's had their time for questions, this is a public hearing. If anybody, if you could come up and
Here.
speak into the microphone, please.
My name is Alan Germain. I live at 24 Pine Street. And I've been listening to John talk about how the water is all contained on his plan for 5 years. As late as today, it came over the sidewalk, down the street, and right down my driveway, where all the water from Pine Street, now that we have a new berm and a sidewalk, funnels, so I get all of Pine Street's runoff, and now I get in a heavy rain, all of the drainage that his basins can't contain, that fill up and run over the sidewalk. And I have video if you'd like to see it from today. So while you wanted assurances with the lady with the dog place, I think this is great. I really do. I think it's great that he wants to pave it. I think it's great that they want to add drainage. But I'd like assurances that when this is all done and the water is still running over the sidewalk because of something we didn't foresee, and the town has been promising to fix the drainage for 5 years. And as late as this spring, I was first on the list, and John never showed up to do a thing. So the DPW.
Make sure that.
No, not you.
Too many Johns.
So,
Just to be clear.
you know, it's wiped out my driveway, it's wiped out my land, it's overflowed my pond, it's knocked down trees, and it runs out into a natural swamp. But,
And this is why I asked the question, so that,
yeah,
you know,
why am
they'll
I
be
getting
working
all
with
the
Sam
water runoff?
they're going to hopefully give you the same assurance that I asked for earlier, as far as that's concerned. The runoff, where it's gonna go, obviously has to go through, you know, Sam, in
Well,
order.
this was today, with the lights on, you can see the water, I got video too, but you can see the water coming right over the sidewalk. And don't get me wrong, John's been a good neighbor as far as that goes. I don't have an internet signal here to grab it with, but.
Neither do we.
Yeah, great. But, you know, this is tonight, and if you look, and I can show you some more horrific pictures. And again, it's not all him either. This is my driveway. That's my driveway. And the engineer in this town knows it. Dick Ward has been out there, he knows it. The DPW guy's been out there, he knows it. And the former DPW guy was out there and he knew about it. And I keep getting told, we're gonna fix it, we're gonna fix it, we're gonna fix it. And every year, I got roots showing, I got a driveway that's wiped out because I have a dirt driveway. I can't even pave it because it'll undermine the paving. So I can't improve the front of my property because of the water problem. And the only other issue I would have with all this blacktop is, it's already a racetrack when no one's home for the kids. If we pave it, it's gonna become the quarter-mile strip. Maybe we could put in a speed bump or two.
What I'm actually proposing is, I'm going to be proposing, when we're not open, is I'm going to be putting gates at the openings. And then there'll be along the berm will be wheel stops that are concrete, so if somebody drives over that, they're gonna rip the bottom of the car out. That will solve that.
All I can see is.
And I completely agree with that statement, because when we're not there, right now, it's tough to manage it, okay?
That's why we're here, to try to
And
Yeah, I thought
work
you were
this
gonna
out.
come out the other day when them two kids on bicycles were throwing stones at your stop sign. I went out and I screamed at them. They looked at me like, what?
the other thing is too, I just want to assure my neighbor, and I've tried, Brenda and I, and all the Ediville staff have tried to be good neighbors to everybody on the streets and throughout the town, is that, obviously our goal to work with Fuss and O'Neill and Arthur is to keep our water on our property. But, I want it, but like he mentioned, there is existing problems that are unrelated to us, potentially compounded when there's high periods of rain, but this drainage system was never completed, and that's one of the goals here tonight, is to get that going. That's a big expense to us to build all that drainage, but that will resolve our water.
And I'm okay with that, provided, I just wanna know, where's the plan B if the drainage proves to be inadequate? And then, what's the town's plan to do something with the drainage on the street side of that sidewalk and berm that got put in, the little curbing that got put in? Because now it comes down Cherry Hill, it comes down Pine Street, crosses the road 2 or 3 times, and then it makes the left turn right in front of 24 Pine and goes right down my driveway. Every drop of that water ends up in my driveway from the entire street, as well as what overflows, which is not often. I mean, we gotta have a heavy rain now to get it to go over. But now even a small rain, I get the street runoff, which is not Ediville's issue, because there's no drainage that's been put in on Pine Street.
See,
So I become the drainage.
the beauty of our plan is that when it's completed, that our water stays with us.
then
And to answer your question.
This is what we're hoping for, because with working with Fuss and O'Neill, that making this drainage proper and putting this in the right way is going to hopefully help with your problem.
But we can't fix Pine Street. I just want the board.
I'm not asking him to, this is my driveway.
I just want the board to.
You've seen it, John.
Oh, yeah. I just want the board to, I want the board to understand, I can't fix,
It's a public way.
150 years of whatever is the issue, but I want to contain my water, and, obviously, if you have a 100-year storm event, I mean, things can happen, but other than that,
I like the idea also of it draining into the area where it's not going to be paved, because then it can.
That's right.
Again,
yeah, there's,
that's where it's being pitched to,
Yeah.
on one half of it anyways, right?
yeah, well, we're picking up all the drain, all the stormwater, and correct me if I'm wrong, Arthur, right? All the stormwater that's going into the structured basins. There's 3 things happening. One is each basin is a leaching catch basin with stone. The piping that connects everything is leaching. And then now with this new system, Arthur's got this thing daylighted into an existing drainage pond, let's call it, down here. When I bought Hanula's property, I got that as part of the deal. And the town does dump some water into that on my property, but I also, it's mine, so, I mean, and then ultimately, it goes under the road and over to what was known as the Heckler Bog down that way, and then it gets fed into the Weweanick, I think, eventually. But that would solve, so, what I'm trying to do is collect my water and handle it, and this allows that to happen. There is systemic problems on Pine Street that I have nothing to do with, and that need to be addressed between maybe this board and the board of, whoever's in charge of that. I don't know all the moving parts on that, but I'm trying to make this as best as possible, and I think you've seen the improvements, and I think you've recognized.
It was exasperated when the sidewalk went in. That created the funnel. So while it's not John's fault, when the sidewalk went in, that created the funnel to my driveway. And then an exceptional rain, well, today, a lot of the parking lot, and he's got a dirt parking lot, and even that wouldn't leach, because the water table's high. So that filled up, overflowed his basins, which are nothing more than a glass bottle. When it fills up, what's it gonna do? It's gonna overflow in the countertop. Well, that's what the basins do, as well as the one in front of my driveway, the town put in. They just dug a hole, and they put a grate in. It doesn't go anywhere, so it fills up, and then it runs out my driveway.
Just a leaching basin.
That's all it is, but it doesn't leach. So my issue is, if this entire parking lot becomes pavement, now there's no leaching through the asphalt. So now, all that water's gonna wind up in what I would like to make sure is not an inadequate catch system. When you go down here and you see Route 44, where they come off onto 58, you see these big giant retention ponds. You know, I look at the parking lot across the street from Edaville, and that's a sizable piece of property. Where's all that water gonna go?
Well,
I think this is going to improve it.
But what if it doesn't?
well, that's why we have Fuss and O'Neill, and they'll take a look at that. They'll request any information that needs to be, that they need to have. There's a scientific method to calculate the drainage, where it goes, how much it holds, and hopefully that's what will be done, so, yep.
I'm not saying that, John has been a good neighbor as far as that goes. That end of the parking lot is where the exit, my end of my driveway is where his exit is. Only once in all these years has there been an issue with cars trying to go in that way. And it happened to be a night my son was trying to come over and he couldn't get down Pine Street. But it was crazy. Other than that, he's improved his entrance. I don't have an issue with the traffic. I get to see a traffic jam. The headlights, by the way, are not an issue. Once in a while, there's a car parked facing this direction, but I'm way in the woods anyway, so it would be more like maybe Peter might see it because he's close to the street, or Kerry and Frank next door to us. Maybe that could be the travel lane up against that sidewalk, so they couldn't park right there, and they'd have to park, somewhere different, but that's never been an issue. Speeders have never been an issue. Kids tearing up the parking lot in the middle of the night when you're closed, that's been a little bit of an issue, but no big deal. And, so I'm not finding fault. I'm just saying that it's finally come to the point where I'm glad this is what's happening, because it lets me come before you guys and say, hey, I keep getting promises year after year after year, we're gonna fix, we're gonna fix, we're gonna fix. And, he promised me I was first on the list. And then all of a sudden, I call him, where the hell are you, John? Oh, well, I got other stuff, and I'm sorry.
What's your address again?
24.
All right, we'll take a look at that, and thank you for telling us about it, and we'll, take a very careful look at what's going on out there. So,
Mr. Mackey, I just wanted to say that the sidewalk has been great for the neighborhood, because the kids are all walking up and down it, we see them there, and it's been a much safer environment, because before they were all in the street, so the sidewalk really was something everybody really wanted, and we did that. So, just so everybody knows, it was a real improvement.
anyone else have any other questions or comments? Seeing no other hands, I know Fuss and O'Neill Sam will take a look at this, the drainage calculations and what's going on out there. We talked about lighting, see how that's gonna work, and we'll take a look at the bylaws, whether islands are necessary or not. You know what's been said here, so just have to keep all that in mind. So, and Fuss and O'Neill really hasn't had an opportunity to look at these plans yet, have they?
No, well, there was some question about, you spoke about a couple of elements that you're intending on doing that aren't reflected on the drawings. I think that's part of, I wanted to get this, understand better what the application is, and obviously we can look at the specifics of drainage.
So we might need the lighting placed on the plan. I don't know if you need a plan with contours on it, or do you have one?
No,
We don't have one, but
we
do you
do
have
have-
one?
There's one with grades on it, and
Okay.
there's one that has the parking striping on it.
Okay. So you have everything you need, except for you don't have the lighting.
And the calcs,
Right.
revised.
Okay,
I mean,
so
And we do have some initial calcs, but we had asked for some additional information. We'll
Okay.
do a more thorough review now and
okay, great, okay.
outline those requirements for Steve.
All right, if it's all right with the board, we'll schedule the next meeting. We'll continue this to the 9th.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing to January 9th.
I'll second that.
Do we have to state a time?
Yep.
What was, the
7 o'clock, what is the other one, so say 7:20? 7:15.
7:15, yeah, that'll work, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, could I also ask, what is the deadline for us to get the other application in, the Jack?
I think Monday.
Okay.
You need a plan, application, but Jill would work with you and Stephen can work with you on that.
Okay. We'll get cracking on it. I think we've done all the engineering piece of it, so it's more of the application, I think, formalities.
Because that'll have to go before the other departments in town too, like usually the fire department looks at that.
Okay.
and-
Whatever you think.
So,
I'd just like to get the discussion started, that's all.
sure.
Mr. Chairman, you don't have a second or a vote on that continuation.
So we have a continuation, we had a motion, do we have a motion? Yes,
I
Will
did the
made the
motion.
motion, do we have a second?
Seconded.
Kevin, second.
Had a second?
Thank you.
Had a second, so, any further discussion? None, so, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
Thanks, John.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas, John.
One thing I forgot was, does the board feel that we need a site visit to look at this? Or do you want to do it separately? I mean,
Hey, John, wanna hang for a sec? We're talking about maybe a site visit for this.
Oh, sure. Should we wait till the solar project's put before us, we can two-in-one?
Oh, we could do it that way.
Want to do it later?
We do it, yeah,
Presented, then we can do two at once.
yeah,
That
that,
would make much more sense.
I think so, the
all
parking
right, well,
lot's.
then the parking would have to be continued to another meeting afterwards.
I can show you where the solar's gonna go, I mean, it's very, very straightforward.
Yeah, you could go out, do the parking and look where there's solar. You may have a separate one anyway.
You could always come back specifically for the solar too, if you wanted to.
Yeah, why don't we do it before? I think it'll give us a,
Well, I think if we're gonna look at this parking lot,
Yeah.
at our next meeting, we might wanna do a site visit before then.
what's a good time that we won't, you're open for Christmas? And we wanna get it in before the 9th.
Well, you can come when this car's there. I don't, if you don't have a problem with that, we don't.
A Thursday or a Friday, I can't do it this week, or, unless we do it a weekend, but I can do it on a Thursday or Friday of the following week.
Thursday,
Anytime.
Friday of the following week, I believe, Christmas week, right?
It's close.
I
It's
don't
the
I don't
12th.
have a
We'll
calendar,
accommodate whatever.
I don't have a calendar with me, so, what do we got?
How about
Two
the
birds with one
first
stone and
week
bring
in
my 10
January?
grandchildren.
There you go. How many grandchildren?
10.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Next week.
Too young.
Grandchildren, I just had another
Okay,
baby.
so
A month ago.
21st
Two in
and
the oven.
22nd.
So Monday through Thursday is
Two in
good
the
with
oven.
planner.
Monday, when?
Grandchildren?
Monday or, Monday
Two
through
more.
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursdays are better, I will be off Thursday and Friday.
My wife and I, we just had our fourth child.
Monday, Tuesday, and
That's how we
Wednesdays are
started.
tough for me.
4.
Is the 21st.
21st?
21st is good with
21st.
me.
21st.
What time?
It would be,
Thursday.
yeah.
Thursday, the 21st. I definitely need to be reminded,
Oh, yeah.
because we have to go during the daytime.
Well, is,
Gotta get there,
I don't even know what time, how times it get dark?
well, it's gonna get
Starts
dark.
getting dark like about 4:30, and that's the longest, that's the shortest day of the year, I
I think
believe.
it's, 4:11, so we wanna get there at
It'll
least
get dark
by
at noon time.
Right, it is the shortest day.
3:30 at the latest.
Yeah, I can make that.
Go to Dennis that day.
Hmm?
Yeah, go to West Dennis that day.
Oh, I have to go, but
What time, 3 o'clock? Can you
I'll be
make 3
here.
o'clock?
I'll make 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock?
I prefer 3:30.
We need a
Does
motion.
that give us enough time?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, 3:30, okay, we can do 3:30. Do you have any
First?
Yeah. I'll make a motion for a site visit for the Edaville project on the 21st at 3:30.
Second that.
Have motion, a second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Sean.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you. Thank you again for everything tonight.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, John.
Great to see you,
Hey,
John.
Arthur.
And Arthur will be following up with you.
Yeah, no,
And all that. Let's work together and see what we can resolve. Thank you.
Yeah, I just
Appreciate your input. Thank you.
I just think it'd be good if we can.
Okay, next we have Linby's Path. We have a discussion about a possible violation.
Mr. Chair, the planning department has received statements from
He's
abutters.
looking at me.
Oh, well, Jack, you want to jump in on this one?
I'm stamped now.
Expressing concern about the activity occurring at the project site known as Linbia's Path. As a condition of the initial approval placed on the project by the board, there was a 30-foot no-cut buffer along the northerly side of lots 1 and a portion of lot 2. Upon receipt of the complaints, the site was visited by members of this board and planning department staff. And it is the opinion of the planning department that the 30-foot buffer has been breached in at least one location at the nexus of lots 1 and 2 at the abutting property located at the northern property line, causing the reliability of the root structure to be compromised. Similarly, the soil is disturbed in areas throughout the buffer and may have compromised the root structure for significant trees located in proximity to the disturbed area. The department's report prompted a cease and desist order to be issued so that the development team may appear before the board today to explain these actions and discuss remediation efforts. Citing rules and regulations governing subdivisions of land use in town of Carver, section 3.8, modifications, amendments, and rescissions of subdivisions, the board is empowered to modify the conditions of development, having provided the owner with due notice and the opportunity to be heard in accordance with Mass General Laws 41, section 81W. After visiting the site not fewer than 4 times, the department is prepared to recommend that the remaining trees be removed in order to preserve the health and safety of public and of people and property located adjacent to the site, and future owners and residents of lots 1 and 2 after development is complete. The board may wish to consider converting the 30-foot no-cut buffer to a 30-foot no-build buffer, and the space should be a landscape berm with not fewer than 6 additional arborvitae to be planted along the berm. The department staff believes that this will correct the damage done and provide a sustainable conditions. This proposal has been presented to the development team as well as the abutter, and as is the staff believes that both parties are amenable to discussing this. There are 3 administrative matters I believe that need to be discussed, including the location, the scale and grade of the berm, and the maturity of the plantings. If it pleases the board and the chairman, if resolved, the board is able to empower the director to administratively lift the cease and desist, provided that plans are submitted to the department staff that seem to ameliorate these conditions.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Steve Katowski. I work for Webby Engineering. I was asked to show up just to see if there were any concerns from the board. My client had to go through a first round of some new cancer treatments today, so he was told he probably wouldn't be in condition to be here this evening. Asked me if I could show up to see if I could try to help out in the problems that are happening between the abutter and the applicant. I went out and staked out the property lines and staked out the proposed house. At the time where some of the area had been breached, there was a big pile of logs that were from the abutting property. And I had mentioned to the applicant that, he said, "Where's my property corner?" I said, "I think it's underneath that big pile of logs over there." So he took it upon himself to remove the pile of logs, and I think that's how that kind of started the process. I wasn't aware until this evening that there was a further breach up a little bit further up on, as you get closer towards High Street, but what we talked about, what Stephen and I had talked about, I think that Andy would be agreeable to that. He did say he had met with Stephen over the weekend or last week at some point. I just got the call on Monday to see if I could come here. But Andy did seem like he was agreeable to cleaning up the mess that's out there. He did say that some of the trees had been basically, I saw that they had been snapped off onto the neighbor's property. So he said he had no problem with cleaning that up. And I don't think an additional 6 arborvitaes are unreasonable. And, I think I can safely say that, he'd be okay with that.
All right. So, okay, so where do we go from here? So we're gonna, do we need a plan showing those where the arborvitae's gonna be, or,
I think what Stephen's suggesting is if you're agreeable
Yeah.
to their agreement that the abutter and the applicant have come up with, that you give him, because your next meeting isn't until the 9th. That's a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable, you give Stephen the authority to release the cease and desist once he receives a plan with the berm, with the arborvitae, and there was something else, slope, is all submitted to his satisfaction.
that sounds good.
Mr. Chair, through you, I do see the neighbor in the audience, and I'm gonna feel comfortable if he can come up and at least be amenable to this agreement
Sure.
that the developer and staff has agreed to. Throw you right under the camera. Welcome and thanks for meeting me the other night.
Not a problem. Dan LeDuc, 21 High Street. I like the plan that we have discussed with the berm and the arborvitae's.
Okay.
I'm not sure you talked about that I took it upon myself to move the logs.
No, I didn't say that. I said that the logs were there, and
Right.
Andy took it upon himself.
Oh, okay.
because that he was wondering where the lot corner was, and I just pointed, because I had a transit, and I said, I had the angle and distance going up the slope, and I said, I think it's gonna be right where
Okay.
that big pile of logs is. And then, as I said, he took it upon himself when they were digging the foundation to remove all those logs, and then I believe he uncovered the iron rod that was set before, and indeed, that's where the corner was.
Okay.
So you're okay with what they're proposing?
Yeah, they're gonna cut all the remainder trees that are there, put a berm, arborvitae's. I think that's fair and
Okay.
protect everybody around us, vehicles and houses. So,
Okay, well,
Yeah.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
One thing, I went out there, I think last Monday night or whenever I was called, and I noticed that what's sticking out a foundation on Lot 2, there was somebody out there, so the next foundation is gonna be on Lot 2.
Yeah,
And I was just concerned, we don't see a grading plan here, but there was quite a steep slope, from the property line down, had to be, like 6 or 8 feet or something like that. It seemed to me at the time. It was dark, but
he's building the foundation into that, so that back wall will be, the 6 feet more or less will be the finish grade at the back of the foundation wall. And then what he's basically gonna have to do is bring material into the front of the house. With, sometimes if you were doing a walkout, you'd do it just the opposite way. He's actually bringing the material into the front yard. It just made sense as he had to kind of get to that part, to get down to the grade where his footings are gonna be, put the foundation in, and then bring material back, and then grade it towards the septic systems in the front yard. So it's not gonna look like a cave into the side of the hill. It's gonna be, that foundation will be built in, so you have the virgin ground that's in the backyard, and that'll be sloped. He's gonna try to keep about a 20-foot backyard from there.
okay. So that, as we looked at it that night, when I looked at the property line with you, I was just wondering what the drop-off was. So it's not gonna endanger any of the kids or anything that play out in the backyard. Eventually, it's all gonna be to grade out there, so, Okay, great.
One question to you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, and maybe you can bring it back to the developer. The existing lots, Lot 1, 6, can't remember if 5 was still in the rough stages of what was dug and big ruts and everything. Can we get some type of more aesthetically pleasing grading there?
I know Lot 1, he's been using that sort of as a staging area. His plan is obviously get Lot 2 done. Lot 6 on the opposite side was he needed to keep that open because that's where they were bringing the utilities down through there. He is gonna try to actually put a foundation in on Lot 6. Eventually, and I think he was trying to get this done before the winter set in, but what his plan was is to get all the foundations in, except for Lot 1, and then be able to screen the loam that he's got stockpiled on Lot 1 to finish grading around all the remaining lots. I don't think he got to that, and, here we are, and you've got winter set in, but that was his plan. I'll mention to him that, I know that the 2 lots he's got finished look very nice.
Yep.
And then I think once he
Does.
gets these 2 foundations in on these 2 lots, it'll, help to make it have a more finished look.
Good. So, any other questions?
I know we mentioned it already, my only concern is the size of the arborvitaes and the size of the berm. I guess that's gonna be discussed though.
And that was your question?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
because I just didn't want to leave it like that and then put a little berm and little trees. Make sure we get the right size.
I believe that that's something that we could perhaps resolve administratively and don't have to wait until the next board meeting on the 9th. And so if the board felt okay with that, a motion to empower me to do that and resolve and release the cease and desist upon submission of those plans, I think would be proper or suitable.
Maybe Mr. Leduc could chime in on those too.
Yes, we intended to circle back to the butter. Yep.
So so the plans will be drawn up, and Mr. Leduc and Stephen, you'll look at these and make sure that it's agreeable to the neighbor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
I'll take a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the conditions that were outlined by the Director of Planning, and to authorize the Director to release the cease and desist upon receipt of the amenable plans. I think I got it all.
And I'll second that.
So you have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
All right, thank you
Good
for
night.
both coming tonight.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Thank
to
Merry
clear this
Christmas,
up.
guys.
Busy, huh?
All right, we're going to other business. Planning board member notes.
I don't have any, other than wish everybody a merry and safe Christmas.
I'll second that, Will.
I like that.
I'll third that, and happy Hanukkah to those observing starting tonight.
There you go.
Happy Hanukkah, dear Jimmy.
Yes, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas also, and Happy Hanukkah. And thank Jack for being with us tonight, too.
Thanks,
And I
Jack.
hope that he and his family have a good Christmas.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, planning director notes.
Well, I too would like to wish the board and Jack a very Merry Christmas and all those other things. Mr. Chair, you may recall that the last time we met, there was an item on the agenda that was a solar zoning item. Having spoken to my predecessor as well as the town administrator, I think I better understand the situation. However, the board is not yet in a position to be able to review amendments to the zoning as it stands. And so my understanding is that if the board felt so inclined to create a subcommittee, we would be able to recommend to town meeting amendments to the zoning as it exists for the solar setbacks.
I think that's a good idea.
So how do we go about doing that? So we have to vote
We would
tonight?
appoint 2 members to participate with the town administrator and the director of planning to come up with a viable bylaw. Or not,
Amendment to the bylaw.
or not,
So we need 2 members from the planning board.
correct.
Well, I, for one, would recommend Will and Jim for that. Because they are so
involved. Such a wonderful job with
So
that.
much fun.
Why shouldn't it go that way?
I think you should make a motion to that effect.
I can't motion myself to be an assistant to them, but I would offer that.
Well, do we have to, we have to vote on two members tonight?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm only saying this, I am available to do this.
I like that.
You know, I do have a couple of days off during the week where I
Once in a
know
while.
that everybody else is working full-time. So I could participate. In this.
I'll just let the board know. My plate's pretty full. Not that this isn't an important issue for me, but my plate's pretty full with not only work, but personal items. So I don't think I could give what's necessary towards this. I look forward to seeing how it festers through. Obviously, if the board wants me to participate in it and be a part of it, I will definitely do that. Because it is an important piece, but I know that my meetings would have to be sketchy. So,
Since you were mentioned, Jim, would you be available to do
I
this?
guess my question is, I have some traveling coming up for
Yeah.
January and February,
Pardon me?
and I just didn't know when
2 or 3 meetings.
this bylaw, I mean, obviously, when does the
What
bylaw have to, I
Jim.
mean, when does the decision have to be made?
My understanding, I'll defer to Jack if I'm incorrect, but my understanding is we have a placeholder right now for the town meeting.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And that the, whatever the outcome of the subcommittee, it will be presented to the town meeting in April or May.
Now, is it possible, if Jim were to accept that, and we're out of town, and I would be willing, in the basis of him being out of town, to fill in, I mean, is that a
You could make
possibility?
Bruce and Jim the subcommittee and Kevin's the alternate.
I love being an alternate.
And I think, Jim, you got plenty of time. You've got all of January and February to come up with something.
So we just
Well,
have
I'm
to.
just, January, I'm traveling quite a bit, so I just wanna make sure, I don't want, I feel bad enough when I miss the
Or
meetings.
Bruce and
Have to
Kevin
do this
could
remote-
do it, but
remote.
then I know this is dear to Jim's heart, so.
Nothing would preclude if Jim was able to phone in.
No,
And, I mean,
Not at
so
all.
I don't know that it would be necessary for you to be
Okay.
physically located in the.
not at all.
So what do Will and I do? Make a motion to
Appoint
appoint
Bruce and
Bruce
Jim
and Jim?
and you as an
Well,
alternate.
I can't appoint myself as an
Well,
alternate.
Will-
Will would
I'll make
probably
a
have to do
motion
that.
to appoint Bruce and Jim and Kevin as the alternate to the solar subcommittee. We do need a second from
Second,
someone.
I'll
Well,
second.
how can I second it?
You can.
Oh, I can second myself as
Yes,
an
you
alternate?
can.
Jim already
Very
got you.
well.
Jim, I have
Jim's
second.
got it.
So we got a motion. Jim did the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Thank you.
And then,
I look forward to working with.
so I'll meet with you when we'll schedule the times that we meet and discuss what we have to do. All right. And, okay.
You got anything else? there, Mr. Stister?
That is the last of the director's notes for this day.
Motion to
Okay, thank you.
adjourn.
Next meeting date is the 9th.
Tonight.
Okay. And so we have
We have
a,
a site visit
Oh, you decided that?
on the 21st
sir.
at 3:30.
Correct.
okay.
Good to see you, Jim.
See you.
All right, we have a motion for adjournment. I hear a
Second.
second. Have a second. Those in favor? Aye.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.